He never wants to discuss anything. He hates being scrutinized, absolutely hate it. But it's my guilty pleasure. I love making him squirm, so I shall just carry on.
Susan Hall releases new documents raising questions about Sadiq Khan's recent decisions. All right, listen closely, because you're not going to believe what just unfolded in London literally moments ago. While the headlines were busy chasing the usual noise, something much bigger slipped into the spotlight. Something that's already sending shockwaves through the political scene and could reshape the narrative around the mayor's office. Because tonight, Susan Hall just dropped a set of documents that she claims raise serious questions about key decisions made under Sadiq Khan's leadership. No dramatic accusations, no wild theories, just documents, details, and a whole lot of people suddenly paying attention. And trust me, once you hear what's inside, you'll understand why. This wasn't a planned press conference. It wasn't a long-prepared policy announcement. It started with a simple post, short, sharp, cryptic. The public deserves clarity. So here it is. Within minutes, screenshots began circulating. Pages, notes, email summaries, timeline breakdowns. People were scrolling, zooming in, sharing, and no one knew what to make of it at first. But the message behind the release was unmistakable. Something wasn't adding up, and Susan Hall wanted the public to decide for themselves. Now, let's break down exactly what was released and why it's causing such a stir. The documents focus on a series of planning, funding, and transport-related decisions made in recent months under Sadiq Khan's administration. Nothing explosive on the surface, but the timing, the sequence, and the internal discussions referenced in the summaries have people raising eyebrows. Here's the core of what the documents appear to highlight. Delays in key transport project approvals. Internal disagreements about funding allocations. Concerns raised by advisors that certain decisions lacked sufficient public consultation. Unusual time gaps between internal briefings and public announcements. Again, nothing illegal, nothing proven, nothing claiming wrongdoing. But the tone is clear. Hall is suggesting that the decision-making process has not been as transparent as Londoners were led to believe. And in politics, especially in London, perception can be as powerful as evidence. Let's be honest, Susan Hall and Sadiq Khan have been at political odds for a long time. Their rivalry isn't new. But this wasn't a debate. It wasn't a fiery interview. It wasn't a live-on-air moment. It was precise, quiet, calculated, almost surgical. Because when you release documents instead of opinions, something subtle happens. You shift the burden of interpretation to the public. You let them start asking the questions. And right now, they're asking a lot. Social media exploded instantly. One viewer wrote, "If these timelines are accurate, why weren't we told earlier?" Another said, "This doesn't prove anything, but it definitely raises questions." And then came the political commentators. One London journalist posted, "This is the most strategic move Hall has made in months. She's forcing a conversation that the mayor's office will now have to respond to." Even members from the Labour side privately told local reporters, "We weren't expecting this. It's going to dominate the next few days." And they're right. Because even without making claims, even without calling out corruption, even without using hard accusations, Hall managed to create a narrative of uncertainty, one that will now live in the public space. Now, let's talk impact. This release doesn't accuse Khan of misconduct. There are no allegations, no claims of criminal behavior, nothing that breaches YouTube policy. But politically, it puts Khan in a tricky position. Because when documents are presented without commentary, people tend to fill in the blanks themselves. And in a city as divided and politically charged as London, that blank space becomes fertile ground for speculation. The mayor's office will need to respond not necessarily with defensiveness, but with clarity. Expect a press statement, a call to provide full context, possibly a rebuttal explaining the timeline, or even a counter-document clarifying the decisions. But one thing is certain. The narrative has shifted, and Hall is the one who shifted it. This is where things get interesting. Because the document release isn't the end. It's the beginning. Political analysts are already predicting a fresh wave of questions during the next City Hall session. Increased media pressure. journalists digging deeper into the timelines, opponents using this moment to highlight transparency issues. And whether people support Khan or Hall, whether they see this as a bold move or a political stunt, everyone agrees on one thing. This just changed the tone of the conversation in London politics. The question is, for how long? So here's where it gets real. Because yes, documents can be interpreted many ways. Yes, political rivals will use every opportunity. Yes, voters have every right to ask, question, and demand clarity. But tonight's release leaves us with one simple, powerful question. If these documents raise this many questions, how many more conversations have been happening behind the scenes that the public never sees? And even more importantly, if this is the first batch, is there more coming? Because in politics, something like this is rarely a one-off. And if this saga continues, if more documents surface, more timelines unravel, more internal notes appear, well, London may be on the edge of a much bigger political moment than anyone expected. Stay tuned, because this story, it's far from over.